With the world of tabletop gaming continuing to evolve with technology over time, online gaming has become more accessible and more necessary than ever. Everything from virtual tabletops to automated character sheets to dice rollers, all of these things can make online gaming so much easier. But with online gaming comes some pretty big traps that we need to talk about. Boy, talk about a video that would have been way more timely and relevant about 6 months ago, but I wasn't doing YouTube videos 6 months ago, so we're pressing on. Welcome to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today we are going to talk about some of the biggest tips that I have for online gaming, specifically playing D&D online, tabletop gaming online, that I honestly don't see that many people talking about. Most of the tips that you find online are dealing with how to set up your favorite virtual tabletop, or how to effectively use the character sheets on D&D Beyond, or using an encounter tracker to track your monster's hit points. And all of that is great. All of that is necessary. But unless you have a table of people following the 3 things that I'm going to go over today, then your game's never really going to be what it could be. Number 1, close your tabs. One of the best parts about D&D in the physical space, going to a table and sitting down with your friends, is your ability to take your phone and place it to the side face down and sit back, enjoy the company of your friends or family, and enjoy the story that you all are collectively telling together. And when you're playing online, it's a lot harder to do that. When you're at your computer or on your tablet, it is very easy to have a lot of things that can be very distracting at just a click away. And I have a 2-monitor setup on my computer. I am even more vulnerable than many people because I can have my game going over here, and over here I can have stuff open, whether it's a tab with social media or Spotify where I can play music in the background while we're playing, or D&D Beyond, or even just Google opened where I can just type in a quick search. When a question comes up related to the game, I can switch over and tap and look something up. And in that moment, I'm out of the game. There is a distinct difference in searching something on the internet and looking something up in a physical book at a table. And it also becomes a lot easier to look up the rule quickly and remove the DM's ability to make a call on the fly to allow the game to continue flowing. Or perhaps you're on a laptop with a single screen, or your desktop only has 1 monitor, and you decide to pull your phone out because you hear a vibration. Maybe it's a text, maybe it's Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. And so you pull your phone out, you have it just below your camera, and you start looking at it. I'm going to tell you what I used to tell students in my classrooms when I saw them looking at their phones in their laps. Either you're looking at your phone or your crotch. Either way, I would like you to stop. So yeah, don't fall into that trap of you. It depends on the table, obviously, but rarely would you pull your phone out and just start browsing the internet when it's not your turn. Very rarely when another PC and the DM are engaged in role-playing would you start just thumbing through Twitter. Because it's disrespectful to the game. It's disrespectful to the DM and your fellow players. But the temptation is so much easier when you're playing online. The temptation is there to where you can just click over, do a quick browse while somebody is finishing up their turn or resolving a rules question. And before you know it, it's your turn and oh no, what was I doing? The bottom line is you are in a largely controlled environment with very little accountability when you're playing online at your computer or your tablet. And you need to be diligent to maintain focus. And I'm speaking to myself more than I am speaking to you right now. I've started exporting my D&D Beyond character sheets to PDFs so I can have my browser closed. So I'm not looking at like spell descriptions and all that kind of stuff because I'm bad at this. I am one of the worst offenders at this. And so I have to export my character sheet to a PDF so it's open, and I'm not opening any other program. I have the call and whatever virtual tabletop we're using, and my character sheet, and then my dice on my table. And that's all I'm going to open so that I can be a good player and focus on the game at hand. Because it's way too easy to go down a rabbit hole during the game, and that's not something you want to do. It's pretty disrespectful to everyone at the table. So be diligent, close your tabs. And if you would like to yell at me about that first point down in the comments while you're scrolling down, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way down there. It really does help out the channel so much. And if you would like to talk about this in real time, I do stream over on Twitch every Sunday and Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central and Saturdays at 7 a.m. So come by, hang out, twitch.tv/thegeekpantheon, link down in the description below. Come by, hang out. I would love to have you. Number 2, just because you have the tools doesn't mean you need to use all of them. For a while, my group would use the Roll20 site as our virtual tabletop for our actual play show, Immersion Renewed, link down in the description below. And the first time we were going to play, I vividly remember spending quite a while finding maps, finding tokens, asking the players to send me character portraits of their characters so I could turn them into tokens, and importing all the monster stats and typing stuff up, and finding cool music and doing all the settings for Fog of War. And about 3/4 of the way through doing all that stuff, I stopped. When we were recording campaign 1 of Immersion Renewed, we were at a table together. We started campaign 2 in May, and you could probably take a wild guess as to why we haven't played in person since the start of campaign 2. But when we were at that table together, we used theater of the mind. We didn't use maps. We didn't use minis. I didn't play music in the background. I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't even print out handouts for the players. I would just describe the stuff. So why was I quadrupling my prep time and also lagging behind on the more important things I needed to prepare just because we were going online? Well, the reality is because I had all these cool new toys that I wanted to use. And I was like, oh, it's not cost prohibitive to do online maps and minis as it is to do actual maps and minis. So why wouldn't I use them here? Even though the reason that we do Theater of the Mind isn't because maps and minis are cost prohibitive. In fact, I have one of the big sheets where I could draw maps easily, and I have plenty of minis, but I have this other new option. And so I got caught up in the shiny new toy thing or shiny new tools and started going down a rabbit hole of wasting a lot of time. I ended up not using any of those things for our first session because my table doesn't use that stuff. My players probably would have been thrown off a little bit if they showed up and all of a sudden there were maps and miniatures and all these different pages with different maps on them and handouts that I was showing them. It would have been weird. So don't do that. However you want to DM or play this game, do it. I personally love the D&D Beyond character sheet automation. Look to point 1 as to why I can't use it anymore, but I really like what that affords me from a technological standpoint and being able to quickly roll dice and look up spells and all that stuff. Philip, the dungeon master of our new show Kyber Shards, up there, he is very analog. He prints out his character sheets. He takes his notes in a notebook with a pen or pencil. And we are kind of polar opposites when it comes to the technology and analog sides of Dungeons and Dragons. But he's not going to change. Just because he's playing online, he's not all of a sudden going to be like, okay, now I'm taking all my notes in OneNote and I'm using this automated character sheet and da-da-da-da-da. So yeah, don't feel like just because it's there, you need to use it. There isn't a right or wrong way to play D&D online. Just do what you're most comfortable doing. Now, this third one is a little tricky, and I want to give a caveat to it before I tell you what it is, because there are situations at D&D tables where people do this thing that I'm about to talk about in a way that is harmful and should be called out and shouldn't be tolerated. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about specifically the woes that happen when playing online versus at a table. And the tip is be more forgiving when people talk over you. Now, what I mean by that, like I said, there are situations where players talk over other players for reasons that are not okay. Either because they think they're more important at the table, they think they're more experienced and therefore they have a right to be heard first. They're simply talking the loudest and they feel like that means something. None of those things are okay. And you shouldn't be more forgiving of people that are doing that, even in an online setting. What I'm talking about is at established tables where you have a group of decent people who understand how to afford another human being the most basic of respects. There are situations where you're going to talk over each other, because even if you all have high quality video set up and everybody's mics are balanced perfectly to where you can hear everybody equally and everybody's internet speed is super fast, so it's the lowest latency you can possibly get, it's still not real time. It's still going to result in people talking over each other. And either it's going to be I start to talk, then you start to talk, and then it's like, oh, sorry, well, you go ahead, no, you go, and then it's awkward and we just break up the flow a little bit. Or there are times where I start to talk and you start to talk and you didn't hear that I was beginning to talk, and so you just barrel right past me. And it's easy to feel like, okay, I guess what I had to say isn't important. But understanding that there are so many factors when you're playing at a table that allow you to know when a fellow player or a dungeon master is about to speak, that are so easy to miss in an online setting. Maybe you have your character sheet pulled up and you're looking at something and you have a question, and so you don't see on the video your fellow player starting to like inhale and lean forward as they're about to talk, and so you just start going with your question. Or maybe somebody's internet cut out for a second and they started to talk but nobody heard it, and you just continue on with your sentence. There are so many situations where this kind of thing can happen, and it's important to be understanding and forgiving in those circumstances where there is no malicious intent, where it's not one of the aforementioned situations where you shouldn't be okay with it. But a way that you can overcome this as a dungeon master, specifically addressing people rather than just asking a generic question that allows people to start talking at the same time. As a player, if you're talking to a specific person, saying them by name, calling them out and saying, hey, you, not saying, hey, you, because that's not helpful, but hey, insert name here, and then asking your question, as opposed to just asking a question in the ether. That can help combat this because you're directing your questions at certain people, and so presumably other people aren't going to start talking at that point. But those are ways that you can combat it. You're never going to fix it with online gaming. It's always going to happen, especially if you don't use video. It's going to happen 10 times more, because then you don't have any form of body language to inform you of when one person's done talking and another person is about to start talking, and you can jump in at various points. It's the reason why for Eberron Renewed, our actual play podcast that's purely an audio format, we always use video. We always have our video up and going because we need to have that flow. We need to be able to see each other to create as close as possible that feeling of being around a table. So A, recommend using video highly. B, address specific people when you're asking questions. Even if it's not a question for a specific person, like as the Dungeon Master, if you were wanting to get the pulse of the group, rather than just asking, how do you all feel about this? Going around the table like, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? It can seem tedious, but it will help a lot in this regard. So those are my 3 biggest tips for playing D&D online that I don't hear many people talking about. Let me know if these were helpful. Let me know if these were at all insightful to you. And if you have any tips as well, hop on down in the comments and let me know what your tips are when it comes time to play D&D online. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.